So everybody, thank you all for making the time here today. I'm Whitney Roberts. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Broken Token Classic Gaming Podcast, and I am privileged to be sitting here with you all here today, as well as Mr. Mark Bussler from the Classic Game Room. And we've got an hour, and we're going to make the most of that hour, cover as much as we possibly can, because there's a lot to cover within an hour. But we also want to make sure that we leave time for some Q&A for you all as well. So as we go, if you've got a question, we kindly ask that, just raise your hand. We'll get to you as we can, but we'll definitely have some dedicated time at the end as well, okay? But we want it to be interactive, and like I say, there's a lot here to discuss. So Mark, I think probably the best way to start a conversation like this is at the beginning. And so I look back on your career, look back on the content. I mean, we're going back into the late 90s. And I mean, how did you get started? How did you come up with the idea? And I know you've had some co-hosts along the way. You've been the consistent persona behind this brand for so long. If you don't mind, just let us know kind of how'd you want to get started on this?
Well, for those who don't know, Classic Game Room is my internet video game review show. It's my brand. It's part of my brand. And Classic Game Room is the longest running internet video game review show in the universe.
Yes. And
I was going to say world, but I'm going to go further. It's in the universe.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking, when he says longest running, it's by time and by number of episodes, because I looked and you were well over 2,800 episodes before COVID. So,
it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
The show started officially in November. I forget the day, but it was like mid-November 1999. Mm-hmm. Some of you weren't born yet. Some of you were born by then. It's been running on and off since 1999. Yeah. And how did it get started? It is a very interesting story on how the whole thing started. I graduated from college with a business degree in marketing in 1998, and I'm from Pittsburgh. And my dad's been in the software industry since the 70s. He started off in time sharing. If any of you know what time sharing is.
Yes.
It was like cloud computing with
it was
a modem.
Back in the mainframe era. So yes.
I remember mainframes and like spinning mainframes and the phone modems from like war games and stuff.
That's right.
In fact, I remember he had these terminals. Have you guys all seen Loki? Like, those kind of weird plastic looking round terminals? Like those are mainframe terminals. Yeah. Like those are just old school terminals. And he had a couple of those. And if you've seen the show, Edit Station 1 is an old Tektronix, like 10, 20, I don't know, whatever the model number is. But that was an old computer that was hooked up to a mainframe for some kind of ancient engineering work. Anyway, my point here is that my dad was doing, he's like this genius visionary when it comes to software. And I graduated from college and decided to go work for him, which in retrospect may not have been the best idea, to be honest. I'm not sure I can recommend working with one's parents, and that's what I did. And I was in marketing. I taught myself website programming while I was in college, so I came out knowing I knew how to program HTML, which is pretty barbaric now, but that was at the time pretty novel.
Had to start somewhere.
And I went to film school because I was going to also do industrial videos. We used industrial videos in those days on VHS to show people how to use this complicated engineering software. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I was starting to do, was to produce these industrial videos, to work with websites, to design advertising. And we did that for, it was 98, somewhere around the end of 98 or 99. I can't remember exactly when this was, but he had this idea that we were going to broadcast instructional videos on the internet using video. And this was crazy. This is like 1998, 99.
He sounds like a pioneer.
He is. He's a genius. I have no idea what went wrong here.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. But he was spot on, because one of the things the internet's great for, internet video is good for, is instructional videos, because you can see how people do things.
Yes.
So we started off doing engineering instructional videos online instead of just on VHS. And then for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why he wanted to do this, but he made this decision in 1999 to start, it was like the summer of 99, to start an entertainment channel on the internet, and it was the worst name ever. FromUSALive.com. I don't know what they sell now. Every now and then someone's like, do you know what that website is? I'm like, I don't want to know. We lost that one years ago. But there was an idea that we were going to have it was like late night cable access television on the internet, like Wayne's World, except awful.
Yeah.
But we made this we turned a small conference room into a studio. And it had like this crappy brown, are kids here, can I swear? We had this brown carpet. There's no other way to say it. It was like this really brown carpet and like just like crappy 1980s like fabric walls. And there was like a plant in the corner. And that was our studio. And we started to produce this like small roster of videos with some local people that we knew in Pittsburgh. We worked with some people who brought in some individuals to just basically produce their own shows in our studio that we would then upload to the internet. In retrospect, it was pretty close to the YouTube model. Where it was different is that in our mind at that time, we were going to like franchise this studio concept, because in 1999 you couldn't shoot a video with your phone and upload it. You really couldn't even take a video camera and just upload footage to the internet. You had to have some pretty heavy gear to go from the video camera to the computer to then the internet, which is what we invested in and built in 1999. So in addition to doing some of the website work, designing the websites, I was doing producing. I was at film school, so that's where I met Dave for the first time, and film school was great. We had a good time, and so we started to. Dave came on board as one of the studio people, and we were doing production crew. Sorry, trying to think of the word here. We were like the production crew, and we produced a whole bunch of shows. And in the middle of this mess of shows, most eclectic variety of shows you can imagine, we had like dance instruction. There was like a religious show. We had one of the first. I think it was the internet's first board game review show or board game discussion show called the Boardroom, which was really good. We had like some comic book stuff, and somewhere in there, I'm like, let's do a video game show.
Yeah.
And all of our stuff had like boring names. It was like the Boardroom, the Comic Room, the Game Room. It's a terrible name. But that's what. So we just started, like, we had no idea what we were doing because this didn't exist.
Yeah.
But we both were kind of film nerds and somewhat technically savvy, and we had cameras and stuff. So we just started messing around with video games, and the Game Room launched in late 1999. And somehow, in this old barbaric time, it somehow got an audience. We would send out a stream. It would go up on like a modem stream, so you could watch it in like a little postage stamp window. There was like a slightly bigger one, and then there was like a really big one, which was like 240 by like 3. I don't know. It was tiny by today's standards. It was ridiculous. We kept most of this stuff on tape, so I guess I'll get to that later. But the Game Room was awesome. We had a good time. We were like in our 20s. And it was like, I think I was 24 when this thing launched or whatever, probably 25. And no, I was 24. And then we started, we ran for the year. It ran for a full year. And it got a little bigger every time. We eventually got a green screen. We got to be a little more creative.
Yeah.
And this was clearly like our favorite show. So we had other producers were complaining like, well, these guys are putting all their time into Game Room. What about my show? But your show sucks. Our show's awesome. And it was one of the biggest shows. I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously we put a little bit more time into Game Room, I think, but it paid off.
Yeah.
To some degree. And then they would go out and we would have to, since there was no social media in 1999, we would like spam internet forums like, yo, check out this show called The Game Room. I think IGN was around then. We'd like spam IGN forums. Like, go watch the new Game Room episode. Check it out. Watch the Game Room. And somehow it got an audience and it grew. And what we needed to do as a business at the time was to get funding to keep this running because it literally wasn't making any money. I mean, this was like total up. It was like bleeding money every day.
Was it self-funded at that point?
This was self-funded.
In so much as it was you, your co-host, and I mean, was everybody just really kind of pitching in just getting money out of their own pockets to
Oh,
build?
no. This was a business enterprise. I mean, this was a pretty well-funded upstart. There's no other way to do it in those days. I mean, I don't even know what the computers and the gear running into the computers and like I can envision these. I don't think I have any good pictures of it anywhere, but just we had racks of monitors and like we had I think we may have bought an old production company at one point on fire sale and like kind of converted that into some of this, but it cost a fortune. So the idea was to then go out and like franchise this, and so that you'd be in like Chicago or something, and you go to like a From Chicago something, and then there'd be like a studio.
Yeah.
And then you'd shoot your video there, and then we'd had our computers and we'd upload it.
Yeah.
But then the .com bust came around, and anybody we were talking to about financing just immediately went away, and this was like mid-2000.
Okay.
So despite the fact Game Room was a lot of fun, we had a good time, and we were young, and we just like stayed up all night playing video games, and we'd show up and just make funny shows. And it was awesome because we were just kids. And despite all that, the money ran out in October of 2000, and it was a business decision. Like, we got to shut this down.
Yeah.
But from there, we had some connections, and I just rolled right into documentary work.
Yeah. Well, I was curious as to what happened between the time, or what you worked on, I guess, or could talk about what you worked on in between the time the original show, or that happened with the original show, and then the revival, or I guess kind of the HD type of era. And I think I noted that in 2008. So, so can you talk to us a little bit about what happened during that lull, what you worked on, and then what brought it all back? How did you decide to pick this back up?
That's a good question. Let's see, 2000, we shut down the internet programming stuff. But like I said, we had everything on tape. So all the Game Room stuff was saved on tape.
Yeah.
But it was all boxed up and put away. And I rolled right into a project called Civil War Minutes, working with one of the producers, a couple of the producers I worked with on the internet stuff a year earlier. We put together some DVDs were coming out in 2000, 2001.
Okay.
So we immediately segued into DVDs and VHS with Civil War programming, and we made a lot of the dancing internet videos. We had dance instruction.
Yeah.
The guy was a good instructor, so we ended up going off and doing some dance instruction DVDs and stuff.
Wow.
And then the documentaries kind of got a little bigger. I ended up doing like another Civil War one that was bigger, and then I did one on Gettysburg, which was even bigger, and I'm out in the field filming, and this is, let's see, 2002, 2003, a couple Civil War films in there. Johnstown Flood is one that we pitched to Richard Dreyfuss. He did the narration for that one, and that was on PBS. Mm-hmm. And I was just like living and breathing like real filmmaking at this time.
Yeah.
So to be honest, the Game Room stuff was like, Dave had to move back to New Jersey. That's where he's from, so that's why that split up. And I stayed and just learned filmmaking. I was out in the field with cameras. Some of my favorite memories are going out to like Gettysburg with just big cameras back in the day and like laying there. I mean, just stay there until the sun rose and got these beautiful shots of monuments. And Johnstown Flood, went out to Johnstown, did a lot of filming. The recording was cool. And then that turned into just basically the documentaries got bigger one after another. And then I did one called Expo Magic of the White City, which was by far my biggest film. The production was 2004. That released in 2005. That's the one I worked with Gene Wilder on that. Mm-hmm. And that did very well. That was a very popular DVD. That was our biggest DVD sale. So I think 2005 was like the record for, the parent company is called Intercom. It's a boring name, but that was like the biggest year, I think, at that time, until the next year when a big chunk of those DVDs came back, because I think Borders went out of business. So it was like the high water mark.
Yeah.
Was like the DVD business was like 2005. After that, the DVD business got really complicated, very difficult. And in the same way mirrors my experiences with the internet broadcasting or the YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
But once the market is flooded and it's hard to get PR, we just we struggled with the next couple documentaries, despite the fact that a film like Westinghouse was one of my favorite films I produced. It's a great film. We couldn't get that one in front of the market. We couldn't sell the DVDs. So I was looking at basically moving on from filmmaking at that time to just going to grad school for like like finance or something.
A more traditional, I guess, a more traditional career.
Well, I was married by 2006, 2007. I was married, and like we had a family in our future.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, probably should get a real job. So that's what happened with that. And but we were still using. I'm trying to think how this worked. It's not the most exciting story in the world, but we were using the internet at that time to market our films. And our DVDs, and we discovered this website no one had ever heard of called YouTube in like 2006 or 7.
Yeah.
Might have been 2007. And I said, why don't we put up those old Game Room episodes and see what happens? So we put up, we were one of the first, in those days you had to be a real company to get paid. It was like the first wave of getting paid on YouTube. I remember this pretty clearly. We were like that first wave, and we were a real business. And we kind of got into, I forget what it was called. It might be their partner program. I don't know. But it was like, I still have like a handwritten note somewhere from this, or signature, whatever it is. So 2007, we started putting up Game Room episodes. And I'm looking to, get out of filmmaking. I'm just looking for my next career. But all of a sudden, they started growing. And I think I went and looked at this report one day. I'm like, we just made like $20 on YouTube. It's just like, wait a second. This is what we were trying to do like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And then next week, it's like, we just made like $40. What's going on here? It's like the people are watching them.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So there's a little fits and starts going on through that era. But I just thought it'd be, what the hell? We're actually, this is actually a thing. This is something that's happening with these videos on this website called YouTube. And I started messing around with ideas on bringing the Game Room back, which eventually, I guess I should segue or interject in here that I released that the DVD like a year earlier in 2007 with like the collection of some of the best reviews from the old days. So it's kind of in my head at this point.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't I start making some new shows? But I didn't know how to do it as like a one-man show at the time, and I was coming out of documentary filmmaking where I was serious. I was a serious documentary filmmaker. Why are you laughing? It makes me sad. I was serious. I was very serious. So I just didn't know what I was doing. So the early videos are just rough because I wasn't quite sure what this format was going to be. Could I do it myself? Was I going to talk with a broken computer?
Yeah.
It's great working as a team with other people because you can bounce stuff off of each other. And that's really cool. I loved that about the original series. I think Dave and I actually did really good work together, being able to bounce stuff off each other because they're both pretty funny. And he's a blast. And I think it was just fun. And then to do it myself, it took a while to get this classic Game Room HD thing going. I'm not sure what the HD, I guess originally I was heavy duty, but I could, they opened up high definition. I remember that this day I was in the office like uploading a video and I'm like, wait a second, this is widescreen.
Yeah.
We can do HD now. So I forget the sequence of events exactly, but I was immediately like went and shot something in widescreen and put it up on YouTube, and it was like one of the controller reviews or something, I don't know. But the show just took off like crazy in 2008 and 2009. And at that time, the production company finally spun out of the parent company and turned into its own company. And then the show on YouTube just exploded in 2009 and 2010, and it was just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, from the time that I've been watching, which is probably around 8 to 9 years at this point. So, I remember that time frame. I mean, that's where I first heard about it, and that's how I first got introduced to it. And I guess, Mark, under that time period, I mean, you went on to 2013, 2014, 2015, and then just by notes and then by memory, I mean, you decided to leave YouTube at some point, and I'm just kind of curious. I mean, if you don't mind talking about it, I'm just kind of curious as to.
Love talking about this. It's great.
As to what precipitated that, and where were you wanting to take the show that you felt that a better medium was there.
It's fun to talk about in retrospect. Like at the time, I can assure you this was like going through a meat grinder.
Yeah. No, I can understand it's painful, but now I look back at it, and it's like now it's a lesson. It's a hard-learned lesson that I think a lot of people should hear, because I mean, you obviously lamented that quite a bit, and you had a lot to lose by doing that because you had a huge audience at that point. So I am just kind of curious.
Oh, it's let's see, 2000. When you're producing something, the classic game room back in the day was just every quarter was growth. You know, I mean, I had to look at the stuff as a producer, but also as the guy on screen. And like it was the whole, suddenly our production company, which was like a documentary production company, turned into classic game room. So yeah, there was a lot of weight on that, but at the same time, it was just always so much fun and it was so exciting. And I liked producing. I never really got into like the whole fame thing. That was never my thing. I always liked to be behind the camera.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons I wasn't like on screen in the early videos. I'm like, I can really fly. I'm like a lightning fast ninja editor. So like I could just hide behind the computer and just blast out videos.
Yeah.
And every video that goes up is doing well, and I'm just roll with commentary.
You found your mix. Yeah.
I found the voice. Yeah. Somewhere around 9 or 10, I think I found it. Am I right here? When did the show not suck? Like maybe 2009, somewhere in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But eventually just started to get more comfortable with it, and it was growing, and I really enjoyed at the time that you could just see like the audience. It's a good back and forth with the audience in those days because it was one of the only shows out there.
Yeah.
I think what people forget now is that in 2010, 2011, certainly before then, you couldn't just shoot these videos with your cell phone. Mm-hmm. Like you still had to have, like we had cameras, like real cameras. We had like real recording computer. I was using my old documentary computers. So at the time I had like, bazillion hard drives. I could really just stockpile gameplay, which was unusual at the time.
Yes.
I guess so. I had a lot of gameplay to edit with.
Well, and capturing that gameplay had to be difficult at that time as well.
Well, it was coming out of the documentary business. Everything was analog. I think I was using. I want to say Media 100, but it wasn't. It may have been Premiere early on. But there was like this big analog capture board. I'm not sure. Some of you might be familiar with these things, but like I'm running like CMYK or RGB, whatever it was, into this analog capture board. Some of the older games I had to bounce off of Betacam SP.
Yeah.
I had to bounce them off VHS to get them into these things.
Yeah.
So this was an endeavor that still required some pretty serious computers, or pretty serious hardware, video hardware, and computers in 2010 and 2011. So we were really ahead of the game in that respect. So people are like, how could you make so much? It's because I had a lot of gear.
Yeah.
I was living and breathing this, and it was fun. It was like, this is so cool. Like, I mean, I love doing documentary work, but like, who wouldn't want to do this? I'm like, just, being able to goof off and play my favorite Atari games.
Yeah, exactly.
Like PlayStation 3 stuff. And we expanded and we started working. I say we were like a company at the time. We started working with game publishers. I remember we had great relationships with Atlas and Activision and Sega, some of my favorite companies. They were so much fun to work with.
Yeah.
We had it was so much fun. Got to go to E3 and all these things.
Yeah.
So it's like growing and it's growing and it's growing. And we were on track to be a big company at that point, a big production company. Like it was really doing well. If it had like one more doubling, it would have been pretty serious. And just then, it was like, it just hit a wall and it started coming down.
In what way?
I was looking at daily reports, and I'll tell you, there was one day, and I forget what year it was. I'm going to say it was either end of 2011 or end of 2012. It was like right around that Christmas time. I looked at it, I'm like, wait a second. Something's wrong here. And it's like, I could see that. Most people don't know this about me. I'm a big data guy. Like, I like looking at numbers and just sort of like figuring out like what's going on with like the numbers. And like suddenly it was just going backwards. Like it reached a peak.
Yeah.
This is not unusual. I mean, everything peaks.
So you're talking about viewership started going backwards.
When viewership starts going backwards, revenue starts going backwards.
Yes. Yep.
So I would say Classic Game Room has been until recently. Classic Game Room was on defensive posturing for a decade.
Yeah.
Because it just never grew again after 2011 or 2012. And as somebody who's working in this, you just can't do this every day when it's going backwards.
When it's going backwards, yeah.
So despite the fact that videos were getting better, despite the fact we had all these other cool shows, despite the fact we were working really hard, we could just never get Classic Game Room like running back in the right direction as far as viewership, which then translates into business.
Right.
So I think it was 2012, 2013. It was like, well, this is going to get. I'm like, well, I think if we make good shows, if we make good shows, it'll turn around. So let's just stick with it. And then there was one day where we just lost like half of our ad revenue all at once.
Wow. Do you attribute that to, I mean, just the business practices with YouTube and just the internet, the changing of the internet over time as well?
Yeah,
or?
I think that's safe to say. I don't think that this wasn't like, I don't think it was a targeted decision.
Oh, no.
We hate these guys.
No.
Screw them.
No, and I don't mean it that way at all, but ultimately as those platforms mature, they're going to make decisions that benefit them first. And the content creators second. So
I think what happened in there, one of the big issues is that the video games all had music in them.
Yeah.
And this is journalism.
And we know where this goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is journalism. I'm talking about, well, here's what the game looks like. Here's what the game plays like. Here's what the game sounds like. But suddenly something changed on YouTube where they had some sort of algorithm or AI or program go through, and anything with music. In fact, I'm not even sure how it decided, but there was a lot of videos, and most importantly here, our biggest videos just got wiped right out.
Yeah.
And that was just like a house of cards. It's just, so, well, it looked like we were having fun in 13 and 14 and 15. From the production standpoint, we were having fun. It was fun to make.
Yeah.
But I was starting to sweat pretty hard by 14, and 15 was a disaster from hell. And then by 16, the original team wanted out, the investors were out. And I bought the company and tried to reboot it with crowdfunding, thinking like if I can just cut costs and kind of like reseat this thing and work with viewers, maybe I can turn this around. And like that was like literally the only solution. It was either that or I get another job.
Yeah.
And it worked for a little bit, but it sort of suffered the same thing, which was then I found Patreon to be very hard to market, because the moment you say it, you just like lose subscribers. You lose viewers because everyone's angry. Why are you doing this for money? Because it's a job, because it's a business. But you shouldn't be doing it for money, but I have to.
Yeah.
And then so it just got just grounded. That didn't help fix the business in the long. You can't crowdfund forever. So I mean, crowdfunding is a good short-term solution for a lot of projects, for a lot of films. Maybe in retrospect, I could have done it differently in a different way, but hindsight is 20/20 on that. This is the tool that I had at the time. It ran 16 was okay. I think it started to kind of turn around, but at that time, people are shooting videos with their phones. People are leaving and going to live streaming. People are watching different kinds of content. People are watching more extreme content. They're watching top 10 videos. They're watching reaction videos. And Classic Game Room is just like this dead format. They're just like this traditional review show made by this old guy no one cares about. Like, it's just kind of like, it was really a struggle.
Yeah.
It wasn't as exciting as like the kids shooting stuff with their phones, because that's really where the market went.
Yeah.
Once phones came out and opened up this opportunity to everybody.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So I'd say 17 was, the writing was on the wall by 17. I'd better figure out something else and fast. But behind the scenes, I had been working on publishing work. I'd gotten in with Amazon pretty early on with some publishing work. So I put out the ultra-massive video game console guides. I started to put out my comic books. I always wanted to do comic books. I could talk comic books, also. But I started to put my comic books on Amazon and print. And behind the scenes, this started to grow. And started to work a little more with some of my old World's Fair stuff. I started to bring back did some photo tours of the 1893 World's Fair, which I was so happy to see in one of the recent Lokis.
Yeah.
They were at the White City with the Ferris wheel. Yeah. And I knew all those pictures in the background. I'm like, I know that one, I know that one, I know that one, I know that one. I know where they are. That building is not there. That's wrong.
Yeah. But it looks good on TV.
It looked great. Actually, I was really paying attention to their set on Loki. I'm like, oh, they're walking. That's actually not bad. And there's a scene in Loki where they're on the boat looking at the White City from the distance, and it's great. That's exactly what the pictures showed.
Yeah.
So to their credit, they did some nice research on that. But to continue my story, the books did pretty well, but they weren't like this exciting thing that people are talking about. People are talking about like, well, Classic Game Room's not making videos anymore for YouTube, or Classic Game Room made it for. I started to put video on Amazon, which was Classic Game Room 2085. Because at the end of 2017, it was clear that the show was doomed, because video you can have 450,000 subscribers and the videos are getting like 3,000 hits. It was pretty clear most viewers weren't happy, or at least the vocal ones weren't happy. And I was like, come on, seriously? It's like, come on, it's supposed to be fun, but it wasn't fun anymore at all. It was miserable.
Yeah.
But I decided, since I still had all this gear and I still had all these games and I still had all this cameras and lights and all this stuff, to make Classic Game Room the way I really wanted to make it, which was bigger. I really wanted Classic Game Room to just get out of this like kind of home, like in the basement kind of show and put it on a set, which is why eventually I moved into like it. I really liked filming those pinball videos at the arcade I used to go to. And I loved that I could walk around the arcade and like, it gave an arcade feel and it was big. And it's like a lot of stuff on screen looks cool. That's what I thought, which was totally different from what I think viewers wanted at that time, which was live streaming and headsets. I never understood that. I just didn't get it. And this was a critical mistake to go this direction. But again, hindsight was 20/20 on that. But I ended up shooting Classic Game Room 2085 as like a last gasp effort. I'm going to make the show bigger. I took like a full year to make this series for Amazon. I'm going to try Amazon, which started to work, but then it didn't work. I think Amazon eventually kind of gave up on their whole video idea anyway with independent content.
Yeah.
They have Twitch and so it started to work, but then it didn't work. But then behind the scenes, like the publishing business came out and it just flattened the video business.
Oh, wow.
So what I do now is I run a publishing company.
Yeah.
Because the publishing business just crushed it. So even if Classic Game Room had done well, the publishing business would have crushed it.
Would have crushed it. Wow.
And I hit a good mix on the publishing. That worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this. I mean, since you brought up the publishing company, how are you dividing your time now between the different properties? Because I know that Classic,
it's hard.
Yeah, Classic Game Room it's a brand. It's a well-known brand, and I know you're working on content for that. I know you're working on content for these other endeavors. I mean, how are you approaching it now that's different from how you were approaching CGR, back in the 2015 timeframe?
Let's see. Well, 15 would have been, the very tail end of when it was like 100%
right.
Classic Game Room.
Yep.
We were like the whole business. 16 was kind of the same. It was like an extension of that, but it was just me at that point. Let's see. What did I do there? Well, eventually I had to quit producing videos. So Classic Game Room 2085, though it turned out amazing, and I just released it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Because thankfully I thought to back the whole thing up properly.
Yes.
Which is not always good, my strong point.
Yeah.
But I backed up the entirety with all the master camera files. I shot it on really high-end gear and saved it all, and it's all on Blu-ray. I'm sorry, I saved it all and packed it away.
Yeah.
But then I think in 19 I saw that publishing was going to actually be my future, and whether it be writing books or working with, I've done a lot of classic print restoration work, like books like Dante's Inferno, Milton's Paradise, a lot of Gustave Doré work. The Crusades book was super rare. I found this like super rare, it has wooden covers. It was crazy. It was like this giant, I'm not sure if anyone knows this, but like the late 1800s, 1890s, obviously they didn't have TV. So these giant books were like your high definition TVs of the era. This was like a really in vogue thing, was to have these monster books. So I'd collect these things and I'd scan them way out of copyright, kind of touch them up, restore them because they all had like water damage and smell like cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
And then I would put nice covers on them and hardcover editions and reprint those, and that worked out well. My World's Fair books did well. The video game books did well.
Yeah.
Everything was actually doing pretty well, and I'd say 2020, 21, and 22 were all consecutive record years. Mm-hmm. But I had to give up video producing to do it. There's no way. So I tried to kind of tinker with some stuff, like maybe people like 80s comics. Like they're pretty. The Classic Game Room takes forever to make. It's a very time-intensive show.
And how many people work on it? I mean, from that standpoint.
At the peak, I'd say we had 6 people and like 15. We had a good crew. We had the other shows were going on. We had marketing.
Yeah.
We had like everything in the world except viewers.
Yeah.
It was so aggravating. I don't know. I'm cursed on this. I'm terrible at social media. It's really what I don't like it. So maybe that's what comes. I'm awful at. I never quite understood like why we're making good shows. What do I need to do to get them? To make them popular. Like all these I was watching like my peers in the video game and the review industry, they're blowing up and we're just getting flattened.
Yeah.
But, I had to move into something else. But in order to focus on publishing, especially in 19 and 20 and 21 and into 22, I had to just I had to basically flush Classic Game Room out of my head completely because I was really just sick of it at that point. I never wanted to hear about it again. So in retrospect, I probably should have paid more care to the brand. So for anyone listening, this is a lesson I have learned.
Yeah.
If you have a good brand, maybe you can't use it. Maybe you're not able to like keep it running the way you want it to, but abandoning it completely is maybe not the right idea.
Yeah.
But also I had no idea what to do with it, and it was a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So that's what it turned into.
Well, I mean, you do bring up a really interesting point because I am curious, just by show of hands in the audience, are you all content creators by any chance? Do you have brands? I've got 1, 2, 3. I see 3 right now. Okay. So, and I do as well. I mean, I'm a content creator as well. I've been doing it for well over a decade. Yeah. Can you give us some advice on brand nurturing, I guess is the best way to say that, because regardless of how you positioned it just a few seconds ago, your brand has endured and it is a good brand. And so I am just kind of curious, what advice can you give us as far as keeping it alive and working on it? Because life comes up. You know, we can't always devote. I mean, I do this in my spare time. Can't always devote 30 hours a week, 20 hours a week to brand nurturing. I mean, can you give us, I guess, some advice there?
I'm learning every day on some of this stuff. So the show is running again right now. And I suppose I need to somehow get there in this discussion and talk about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're getting there for sure.
Brand nurturing's tough. I mean, I thought about this quite a bit, which is if I hadn't not just discontinued producing Classic Game Room, but if I hadn't just flushed all filmmaking out of my head completely, I would have never succeeded in the print publishing business.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it just required, I had to go back to my business degree mentality on this, and it was like I'm just looking at data. Like it wasn't really my favorite thing to necessarily do classic print restoration. Yeah. But I saw immediately, like, first of all, I'm good at this. Second of all, there's a huge market that's just not being tapped, and I can do. Though it's not necessarily a new thing to work with classic print work, but I was a lot better at putting covers and marketing. So I got back into more traditional marketing. I mean, all the bad press Amazon gets. I've loved working with Amazon. I think they've been great. Now, like any of these big companies, it can change the next day, which guess brings me to probably another part of our discussion. Sure. You always got to be careful. Yeah. Putting all your eggs in one basket, as I did with YouTube, was risky, and that we got bit in the ass on that one. As far as nurturing a brand, though, I'm not sure I have the best answer for that. I think sometimes you just need to do what's right for you at the moment, and maybe that's not necessarily the best thing to do for your brand. Yeah. I don't know. I probably should have kept something running somewhere, but there was nowhere to go with it. Yeah, it really didn't do well on YouTube. It still doesn't do well on YouTube. I mean, I don't care now, but like it didn't do well there. They couldn't go to Amazon. Like I was trying to figure out, like some of this new stuff started popping up, like TikTok at the time, like 1819, and like Facebook or whatever. And I'm just like, it's not. Where do you go with this? There was nowhere to go with it. Yeah. So I had nothing. It's just like I said, it turned into a burden that just had to go, and it worked out. I don't know that I can recommend it, but it worked. Yeah. So that's my answer. Well, and you mentioned, and I think this is probably a good segue. I mean, you mentioned the show running now. So you've pulled the brand back up, and you've been able to revitalize it and capitalize on it again. So, I mean, can you talk a bit about what your ideas are and your thoughts are for CGR as it is today? Because I was at your booth. I mean, you've got a lot of media outlets. I mean, the publishing outlets, the books, the videos, now back on YouTube. I mean, I was looking back through it, and Mark, I'll be very honest. I mean, there's some content that you've created that I wasn't even aware of, like the podcast and things like that I had to do a crash course on too. So I mean, you've had your hands in a lot. So what does the road ahead look like for you and for CGR? Well, as far as I know, Classic Game Room is the only internet video game review show to turn into a publishing company that then swallowed the show, that then can now spin the show back off as just like a sub-project. Yeah. It's really weird. Like the publishing company is so much larger than CGR was that It gives me freedom now to do what I want and not worry about it. So
good.
Like, to be honest, like in 2013, 2010, even like 2014, it was exciting every day to have this dream job to produce a video game review show. It was exciting.
Yeah.
But with that excitement also comes anxiety and uncertainty. It was because it's just like once you have this dream job, you realize at any moment this can end, and everybody wants your job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there were a lot of people happy to get rid of me.
Yeah.
Get rid
and
of
when you give it up, you don't always get it back. You know?
No, you absolutely not. In fact, I really thought that when I just had to shut the whole thing down in 18 and like really phased out video production entirely in 19, I'm like, I'm done. I'm never going back. I don't need to. I don't want to. Whatever. I sold off the cameras, sold the lights. I stripped the studio. Stripped out all the cables from the studio.
Wow.
Sold a lot of my personal games. The show's collection is still in storage.
Yeah.
I've unboxed it recently, but I had sold arcade games. I had to really basically restructure the company from the ground up. So by 2022, and here's a good business lesson for creators or really anybody. Yeah. 22 was the record year for CGR Publishing, and when you have a record year or when things are going well, that's the best time to make change. Because you're not panicking and you're not reacting to something that's happening, which is affecting you.
Yeah.
So I looked at the business in 22. I was like, this is fine. A little saturation in this part of the market over there. These books are kind of, they're getting a little long in the tooth here. I've been working on some new stuff over there, but like everything's kind of in this one basket again, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I've been through this before. It didn't work. It was bad.
Yeah. It was bad then. It could be bad now.
It could be. You got to watch your sides on this stuff.
Yes.
If you have everything in one basket, it could just get dropped and blown up or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just started to think about as a publishing company, and the way I look at it is I don't care what I'm publishing as long as it's publishing.
As long as I have something to publish.
Yeah, as long as it's like good. I don't produce crap. I'm not producing hate content or garbage or like I want, it's just history. It doesn't matter if it's comics, like How to Draw books always did pretty well. Instructional content did well, but video game stuff, whatever. So I just thought, if I'm going to start diversifying the catalog, I need to kind of get back into social media a little bit because marketing is like 95% of the battle on these things. Like, history books might be pretty easy to market. I think they're relatively easy to market because if you're interested in like the 1893 World's Fair of Chicago, you're looking for it.
Yeah.
But if you're like working on a book on like, I don't know, carts, like Robot Kitten Factory was one of my favorite projects I did in that like 2020 era, but like I could never market it. It was a struggle. So I'm thinking like, if I want to do more work that's outside of this genre, I need to get back into marketing. And that's when I started to tinker with music. And I thought that music would be a cool way to approach social media because TikTok was starting to be a thing at this point. Instagram's a thing, and I'm a lousy influencer. I mean, I just suck at it. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. I'm not like the wacky guy on camera that can I'm not a guy. I can't do good like 15-second videos. That's just not my thing. I'm a documentary guy. And I acknowledge this, but I thought by using music, I could find like, I'm better at editing. I'm better at like the techie stuff behind the scenes. I thought maybe I could just come up with some cool social media videos utilizing music and animation or music and something and video and music. I edit to video. I edit to music all the time. So to me, it's very natural.
Yeah.
So that's when I started investing in some keyboards. And like, if they work, they work. If they don't, I'll sell them, whatever. It's not the end of the world. So that's where I was starting to use music to market print. And I can't say it worked for print specifically, although I have done a lot of commercials for my books on various sites and even like eBay and stuff. Like you have like a little video and you put music on there, it just brings up the video. But then the music started to get a little more serious and I started looking into music publishing. And anybody who thinks you can make a lot of money streaming music, by the way, no. You're better off with YouTube. So like Spotify and these places. I started looking, but it was like a hobby, so I just would get my sales reports. I'm like, I just made $1. Woohoo! Sweet. But it started to like gain. What I noticed about the music is it started to get better. I could just tell I was getting better at the producing side of it and better at the making of it side of it. So I started to get a little more serious with the music. And though I know I couldn't, like 48, like I'm not going to be a rock star. But like I could definitely use music and video in some fashion. And through this very roundabout sequence of events, I had no idea this was actually where this was going to end up. Beginning at 23, I really started to get serious about putting music on TikTok videos. and I own the music rights, so I actually do earn like a little tiny fraction of pennies on music on like TikTok and Instagrams and stuff. So I'm like, all right, not only am I marketing, but I'm getting paid some fractions of pennies. I'm cool with this.
Yeah.
It's not hurting the print business. Print's doing fine. Everything's cool. I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
Then people were like, what about Classic Game Room? Why didn't you produce some more Classic Game Room? I'm like, people don't want Classic Game Room. I really figured it was done. But I got a lot of people just asking, like, what about Classic Game Room? I'm like, what am I going to do with it? So I started to tinker with like the 80s comics, sort of opened up Classic Game Room again. One day I'm in there just like unpacking a box as I was starting to set up some 80s comics shots and like tinkering with, I have a TikTok called 80s Comics. Hasn't really taken off, but that gave way to me opening a box of the Atari games. And I'm like, kind of miss this.
Yeah.
Kind of miss the Atari games and like the cool stuff. And I started thinking, well, I got a Classic Game Room TikTok. I set it up like years ago. I never used it much. So I started filming some Classic Game Room TikToks. And I put the music on. I'm like, this looks really good together. Like just showing the Atari games with music is, I think, a little more relevant than maybe me talking about the Atari games.
Yeah, fair.
And there has been some slow growth on TikTok. I haven't been able to dig into it yet. That maybe have some. I think we've talked about some other social media stuff, but like how you approach social media. And I'm by no means the expert here, but I could see that there was something to the music and the video games. And I was out with my buddies one day, and they're just like, "Why don't you put it back on YouTube?" Like, because they don't want to see it on YouTube. They're watching, these angry videos, and they're watching, live streaming, and like. Yeah. You have to approach a video like, I'm angry because, like, you have to get someone's attention and like
everything's a reaction.
1 second. Yeah. It's like, I don't do that work. I mean, CGR is like the Kurosawa of like, it's like takes like an hour and a half for the like videos to build. If you watch a Kurosawa film, it takes like an hour and a half for the action to start. For Classic Game Room, it's like I like to build it up a little bit sometimes. Yeah. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, the music, Omega Ronin in particular, which is my synthwave project, just not only do I think it just showed a lot of improvement technically and on the music side, I think the albums turned out pretty good. Like 14 albums now or something. Some of them are singles, so that's a lot of electronic music. But then I put I put a video up on YouTube. Like, well, what the hell? Maybe my friends are right. What's the worst that happens? I have to take the whole thing down again. And honestly, I didn't care. Yeah. So I put it up on YouTube, and then it's just like people loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it's not getting millions of views or anything, but what I did see is that the people who did watch it enjoyed it. And to hear from people that, and I've been doing this a long time, I'm an adult, so it's like, oh, okay, so they seem to like it. That's cool. Not really, do they actually like it? I don't know. They say they miss me, but they don't know me. Do they really miss me? Like, I don't know. I sort of tiptoed into YouTube, but what I realized is that as I kept doing it, not only did people like it, but I was having fun, and though it's not exciting anymore, it's more relaxing, and it's just not stressful.
Yeah.
Like all the stress that I went through in like 13 and 14 watching a business collapse is gone. So and also to hear from people that they like the show for the reasons that I think they should like the show, like that they enjoy the editing, or that they enjoy that there's an adult talking about video games who's not screaming at them.
Yes.
I mean,
there's not an angry person just wailing on me.
So this, like, to my surprise, honestly, I didn't think it would work. Just like, all right, well, so people are happy if I'm just playing an Atari game and like. I started to rethink more recently, like the whole, like, what is the premise of this show? Video reviews are kind of obsolete now, if you think about it, because any big game that comes out has been reviewed by countless people, like within an instant, and they're live streaming it
within an hour to a day.
Yeah,
and it's done.
Yeah, I can't. I don't do live streaming. I'm terrible at live streaming. And I don't want to do it anyway, but like I can't compete with that on the review standpoint. But what I did realize is that there's a market for the guy with white hair who grew up with Atari, who can actually talk about it in a relevant fashion, because I love Atari. I love Sega Genesis. So I just started playing around with the videos again and working with the CRT and getting back into some more creative filmmaking with the videos, and realizing that while this isn't necessarily going to take off on YouTube again, I don't think it is. There's an audience there who enjoys the content, and it's killing it on the back end on product sales. It's I'll just say it outright as a content creator. If your videos can serve as both entertainment and marketing, then it's a valuable commodity. So I've got product to sell. I'm good at selling stuff, and if the videos can live as a marketing outlet for product, then I'm literally taking the Spaceballs business model.
Yeah.
But it works, and it's true, and it's not an easy thing to do, and I don't think it's something that you're going to come out that you can't do this right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So a big lesson for content creators on this is you do have to build an audience, and I think stay true to your format, but think about how you can monetize that in the future beyond just an internet platform, because there's really very little money in streaming. If you want to make a living at it, you have to sell either a physical product or a performance.
Yeah.
This is why musicians are on tour all the time now, because there's no money in streaming music at all.
Right.
Not that many people buy albums. It's all performance.
It's all performance, yeah.
And the same, or product sales, whatever it is, depending on what you're doing. So.
Well, I think you've given us some extremely valuable advice, and I'm even thinking about it in terms of what I do. As far as, wow, there's what can I take away from this conversation to try to do better myself? I appreciate that. I mean, there's a lot of candor there. A lot of candor.
It's hard. Don't believe me. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm making mistakes every day. I put up a new album the other day and I made a mistake. I had to pull the whole album down. Wasted a month. So if anyone cares about the next Omega Ronin album, will be out. I just had to pull it down to fix like a song title. Yeah. But that requires pulling the whole thing down and going on back up.
Putting it all back up.
I'm not relying on one album, so I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a month behind.
Yeah.
No big
deal. But the fact that the content is there, that you're producing, and that we've got modern versions of you and your content, that's really the important thing.
Well, what's one of the things that's pretty funny, and I didn't even think about this until I started to see that Classic Game Room had some life again, was, wait, the show turns 25 next year?
Yeah.
I had no idea. It was like 24 years. I'm like, it's not on. Holy yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. So
time does go by.
Just realizing that the show's turning 25, and I'm just thinking, well, not only is this good for like marketing, but it's kind of like reinvigorating a little bit.
Yeah.
Like now I really don't give a
Yeah.
And I've got a good marketing hook.
Yeah. And I've got a good brand that I can do something with. Whatever it is I want to do, I can do something with it.
So that's when I decided, I'm going to put out CGR 2085, which was like the higher end 15 hours of Classic Game Room on Blu-ray. And I'm going to go and make the next season for next year to celebrate the show's 25th anniversary.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And so I'm in production, right? So I'm filming stuff right now. And you probably see me walking around with the camera. I documented my drive down here. I've been working on a number of videos slowly throughout the year, collecting footage for another 15-hour Classic Game Room 2085 on Blu-ray next year to celebrate Classic Game Room's 25th anniversary.
Well, I'll tell you this, we'll all be looking forward to it. That's for sure.
I love your optimism.
Yeah, hey, no, it's great. So I want to make sure, though, I mean, this has been like this has been an extremely fast hour. I was just making sure we're good on time. It's been an hour.
Oh, man. Yes. How many dumb things have I said? Did I embarrass myself yet? Some of the greatest things, honestly, there's so much freedom, and I don't want to say necessarily getting canceled, but like, if you have to like throw your brand back and throw your brand away and it comes back, it's so much freedom. It's great.
It is empowering from that regard.
It's fun now.
So for everybody here in the audience, I want to make sure that you've got some time to ask some questions here, Mark, because I think in not so many words, we've probably gotten a bit of a masterclass on just brand management and really just how to approach a passion project, and it's good that we're here today. So, does anybody have any questions?
Not a single question.
Yes,
Amir, what's your question?
Yes, sir.
So, because this is driving me nuts a little bit personally, any advice on capturing video from the Vectrex?
Oh, Vectrex. All right, I got a good question on capturing footage from the Vectrex. This was very difficult a decade ago. It is not that hard now. Modern cameras can do some pretty high frame rates. And like you just kind of need, and my best advice on this is to like is with one of the newer cameras, if you can adjust the frame rates, not a phone per se, but like a real video camera.
Yeah.
It's just play with your frame rate and play with the settings until you get it. It's some games are harder than others. But the newer cameras are just remarkable as far as like you start shooting like 60 frames a second, and that's going to solve a lot of problems. But just play with the settings until you get it. As far as the audio goes, I mean, just record the audio off the mic. And of course, you just want to play Vectrex. But really, if you're playing Vectrex, you're winning.
Yeah,
I think that's what's important.
Amen to that. So, do you produce Vectrex content then, or what's the end run there?
Yeah, I mean, I've shown a couple of videos with the Vectrex stuff, but to Mark's point, it seems like the frame rate is not like 60 FPS across the board.
Yeah.
It's different games.
Yeah.
Different games.
Yeah.
It's a hard game. So the Vectrex is hard to shoot. The Virtual Boy is hard to shoot. There's a Virtual Boy episode going into Classic Game Room 2085, and what I found out is, and I know there's you can do direct board captures. I think direct board captures are super boring, personally. I found that I put a
That's the hot take.
they are. They're just it's been done. Anybody can just do a direct board. Shoot the thing with something.
Yeah.
I use an iPhone to shoot I'm using an iPhone to shoot the Virtual Boy. Okay. Which works perfectly. The new iPhone's ridiculous, and it fits in there. It fits. Sort of put the eyepiece into the lens into the eyepiece, and you can play through the phone because the phones are so damn good now.
Yeah.
They're better than most of the cameras. It's ridiculous.
And you may not get the headache by watching the phone.
Oh, I hate the stereo. So actually, it's got some cool games.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
So there's a whole segment on Virtual Boy finally going into 2085 season 2. I can also tell you there's a giant segment on pinball.
Awesome.
There's a huge episode on Robotron 2084.
Oh, even better. Yeah.
There's Atari 2600 Plus is going in there.
Yeah.
Evercade is going in there.
Oh, the Evercade's going in.
Stuff from here, just I think bar arcades and travel. I'm looking at doing some more actual documentary features in 2085 season 2 as well. Possibly interviewing some game designers and whatnot. I got a couple things that are coming together. So.
Awesome. That sounds good.
It'll be a very cool series, and I'll just say it outright. Classic Game Room next year is either going to be the end of Classic Game Room with a final send-off, or it's going to be the beginning of the next 25 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is going to be next year. It really depends on how it does, how product sales go. Right now, it feels like the momentum is heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraged. I have no problems producing a film, which is not inexpensive at all, and putting it on Blu-ray 15 hours. I think it's going to do great.
Yeah.
I've been wrong before, but occasionally I'm right. Sometimes.
Well, everybody, you heard it here first. Support Mark, and that's how we keep this content alive for sure.
Well, it's a good. I make a good product. So if it's a product that you want to enjoy.
Yeah.
If you like to have the product in physical media, I got Blu-rays. I'm selling them here. You can buy them later. They're on, they're going to be on the website store on eBay, probably Walmart and stuff. Maybe Amazon. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure exactly right now. I'm in the middle of making some decisions right now and expanding the business to the next phase. So
yeah, got it.
It's gotten as big as it can get right now with just me kind of managing everything. Now I need to maybe expanding a little bit beyond into next year, but I'd love to see the show continue. I don't know if it'll never be like it was before, as it's just that it does not do well on YouTube. And I don't think that has anything to do with the quality of the show. I just think that has to do with when you're on a platform, the platform changes. And what they're recommending to viewers is not necessarily what I have any control over.
That's right.
I hate that. It drives me nuts.
Or what you want to produce. No. So,
angry.
Yeah, exactly.
So extreme. So angry. Extreme.
But those thumbnails get the clicks.
I think I saw something on TikTok where I was looking through my analytics, and it's your viewers have watched your videos roughly 5 seconds into a video. That you have less than 5 seconds to grab a viewer's attention on TikTok, and I'm just like, what?
Wow.
I don't really. I'm playing with it.
Yeah, how can you even approach a topic when that's
you don't. It's not topical. A TikTok is it's weird. And I've said going forward, Classic Game Room somehow has to span YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and physical media.
Yeah,
and they're all different.
They're all wildly different. Yes.
So I'm stockpiling footage right now. I used to have a huge stockpile of footage, which I don't have anymore. So I'm starting to stockpile footage so that I can actually keep up with because one of the things with social media is you have to post every day or else you're not getting recommended by a secret algorithm or I don't know, whatever. But, I don't have any real good advice on what to do with Instagram, TikTok. I'm still learning. I don't know. If I knew what I was doing, they'd be huge.
Yeah.
But they're still slowly growing, and it's okay. And they sell glassware. Sold out of glassware twice already.
Glassware.
You people drink a lot of beer. Good for you. All right, I like that.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah.
You opened your recent Hellfire review by talking about the new Truxton game. Thank you.
You didn't know about the new Truxton game?
Not until your video.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I just learned about it because somebody told me on the internet. I was like, wait, I didn't even know about it. And then someone told me. So thank you to whoever told me. It's a bunch of people told me all at once. It's like, did you hear the news? I'm like, what? Are we being invaded by aliens? No! Truxton! So there is a new Truxton game coming out next year. Obviously, you'll be seeing something on Classic Game Room about Truxton.
Yeah.
Not sure what form it's going to be yet, but there'll be more Truxton.
That's good.
You never have enough Truxton. All the spaceship games are cool.
They're all, yeah, and it's a good series, no doubt.
All right.
No doubt. Yes, sir.
Are there any games that you wanted to cover in Classic Game Room but you couldn't or didn't?
Yeah. Any games you wanted to cover but you weren't able to?
It's a good question. There's a lot of stuff that I just didn't get a chance to hit that I don't necessarily was like, I don't know, not that I necessarily missed reviewing it, but now that I'm like kind of opening up the gates a little bit, it's like, well, what haven't I played that's maybe something I'd like? And I'm just slowly starting to like find a couple like Atari games that, I never actually played that. That looks all right. Or maybe it's a couple of Vectrex games I missed. The homebrew scene's really cool. So like games like Xeno Crisis. I haven't played.
It's a really good game.
I took like 5 years off of games. I mean, to be honest, I just had to like flush all of it out of my head.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff I just missed in the past couple of years. But I'm also, I don't have, I'm not really big into super duper long games right now. So I'm just kind of like, I want like arcade games, like, something short. Like Atari's great. I love the Atari stuff. I'm not looking to play like the new Zelda or something. It's not going to happen. No way.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I mean, that's a time investment.
Those are heavy time investments.
It's heavy time investments.
And somebody else can do it better with live streaming. I mean, live streaming is the perfect format for like these longer games, whereas a potential customer or just as a viewer, you want to see how someone's playing it, you sit there and watch a live stream. I get it. I mean, it's not what I do, but I get it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Any other questions? Anybody?
Anything else from anybody?
Yeah.
He knows I've been watching him for a long time. Back when we did him around here. I was one day just watching my YouTube friends. I was there, and there goes on a feed. It says Classic Game Room popped up, and I looked at it. It was a new video, and it'd been dormant for like 5 years. I was like, whoa, wait! So I clicked on it, watching him review Yar's Revenge. That was cool.
Oh, the Yar's Revenge one hooked you back. Yeah. That's awesome. It's a great game. Yeah, it's I'm not sure that if I can't be the only person who's struggling with this, which is like if you have like an internet project or like if you're content creating, you try to tell people things and they either don't listen or they don't see that you're telling it to them. Like I've had like news on the website for like 5 years explaining what's going on. Well, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. I would post things on like Twitter. But it's like you're not reaching everybody all at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like really hard to communicate with people because it's all scattered across these different platforms and whatnot. So I tell the show is running again in some capacity. Pretty busy right now, so it's had to slow down for a bit. But I still hear like, man, when are you gonna make videos again? I'm like, dude, it's on you. It's been going on since like July. Check your feed. Oh, that's right. YouTube doesn't tell you anything about my feed.
Yeah.
I love having 430,000 subscribers. It only goes to 1,500 people.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
But, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's a battle I'm not going to fight anymore because I just don't care. I'm not worried about it.
And it's almost impossible to fight because, I mean, you can't wage that war in any way that you can know how it needs to be waged.
I think if you're going to wage that war, you need to live and breathe it every day, and you need to pay attention to that. What's going on with an algorithm? What are these people doing? You got to like really be on top of it. And I personally just find that exhausting, and it's not what I want to do, and I don't do that. So I'd rather do filmmaking work. So if Classic Game Room can continue, if people enjoy it, and if I enjoy it, and if it can be used for marketing, and if it can lead to a film like Classic Game Room 2085, then it can all work in this symbiotic relationship, and it can continue.
Yeah.
So
good deal.
that's where it's at. So hopefully next year we're going to celebrate 25. There'll be all new like graphics and designs and stuff, and then see how the year goes.
All right.
I hope it continues, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly be looking forward to it. So, Mark, thank you for your time. Certainly appreciate it. Everybody, let's give a round of applause for Mark. I mean, it's...
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, certainly appreciate the introspective look, because I mean it is a lot of history, and it's a lot to go through, and so just appreciate your transparency and your candor on it. So.
It's a hard business. If you're going to do content creation, you better be prepared for a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
And I would recommend a plan B. So always have a plan B.
Well, a plan B while you're working on plan A as well. So it seems to be how it goes.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is. It's difficult.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
for
listen,
watching.
everybody, thank you all very much. Certainly appreciate it, and hope you enjoy the rest of the show.